Good afternoon from Annapolis, Maryland. I'm Command Master Chief Jeff Kirby, the CMC of the United States Naval Academy. We had a couple of questions asked from our faculty and staff this week, and so I thought we'd get some answers and go right to the top. My first guest is our Superintendent, Vice Admiral Sean Buck, the 63rd Superintendent of the United States Naval Academy. Over to you for opening questions, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Master Chief. Thanks for putting this together. Appreciate it. It's really important for you and I to come together, gather up the questions that are on our team's minds, and be sure that we articulate some good, clear, concise answers as often as is needed by the team. Ladies and gentlemen, first for a visual, what I'd like you to see is we have gone out of our way to make sure that Master Chief and I are physically separated by the appropriate social distancing. We're gathered here today on the 53 deck of Dahlgren Hall, one of the most iconic buildings on the yard at the U.S. Naval Academy. Master Chief, I'd like to start out with just a few statistics as we track what the impact of COVID-19 has had on us here. Our brigade is approximately 4,400 midshipmen strong, added with about another 2,500 of faculty, staff, and coaches. Right now, after we concluded our spring break, in which many, many people traveled abroad around the world to enjoy their spring break, many of them had to travel through what were designated level 3 countries with regards to COVID-19 exposure. We've got about 260 of our midshipmen and faculty and staff currently practicing restricted movement due to the rules that stated if they traveled through a level 3 country, they needed to restrict themselves for a 14-day quarantine just to protect themselves and protect the rest of us in case they come down with COVID-19. That represents about 4% of our overall Naval Academy enterprise, our Naval Academy family. We also have 12 individuals that are designated as PUIs, persons under medical investigation for COVID-19 exposure. Of those, 3 have tested positive for COVID-19, 2 midshipmen and 1 civilian faculty member. And they are now practicing their self-quarantine and making sure they're abiding by the medical guidance they got from their providers to get them well and get them beyond the COVID-19. I also want to share to date what our success rate has been in transitioning the Naval Academy to a distance learning academic institution. You all, I know, appreciate the Naval Academy has never offered or conducted distance learning in our entire 175-year history. We successfully made that transition. Today is the 3rd full academic day of instruction, and I'm very, very pleased to tell you that first impressions are that it's going real well. We have our brigade of midshipmen spread all across the continental United States and also in Alaska and Hawaii, and all of those students are in good contact with their professors, attending classes either synchronously or asynchronously, depending on what time zones they're in. And I'm very confident and proud of the effort that the academic dean and his faculty have made in allowing us to transition as successfully as we have. I'd also like to suggest to you that about 97% of our workforce here at the Naval Academy is now teleworking. We're trying our best to abide by all CDC, DOD, and Department of the Navy guidelines as far as teleworking and separating ourselves purposefully for social distancing to help in our contribution to slowing the spread of COVID-19 in our Naval Academy enterprise. So we're off to a good start, Master Chief. With that said, we both know that we've received a lot of questions and or concerns from our team here, and you and I are going to do our best to answer some of those today.
Yes, sir. Agree. And I know on our, first and foremost on most of our minds is our children during this time. Not only the midshipmen being children of parents all around the country, but our own children for our faculty and staff. So our first question, sir, is regarding the CDC, and has the CDC changed its rules when we started to allow teleworking parents or single parents to work from home? Are they responsible for self-care of their children?
That was a great question, and any workforce that has the care of children and is in great need of child development care, they definitely want to know what is the policy. As we understand from the commanding officer of Naval Support Activity Annapolis, Captain Homer Denius, the CDC policy has not changed. If you are a contracted paying customer of CDC before COVID-19 started, the CDC will continue to provide daily child care for your child if that is what you need to be able to work from either home, teleworking, or if you're one of the mission essential folks that come into campus to work from your office space. So let me reiterate that again. If you are a contracted paid customer already of the CDC will continue to care for your child. What they're putting out to all of you all that do use the CDC is, to the greatest extent possible, if you're teleworking from home and you're able to mix your parenting obligations and your work obligations and keep your child at home, we encourage you to do so. That is all under the effort to minimize the class size at the Annapolis CDC. So if you're able to do that, we appreciate it, and I'm sure the moms and the dads of all the other children appreciate that, as well as the caregivers at the CDC.
That's great, and I'm sure that's a huge relief for our families, sir. The second question was regarding the brigade's return, and since it is delayed indefinitely, what are some markers that you as the superintendent are looking for before you make the decision to bring the brigade back?
Good question. The markers that I will continue to use are the markers that I used when I made the first decision to delay their return by 2 weeks. It's the same guidelines that we're receiving from CDC, from the Department of Defense and the Department of the Navy on how is the virus trending, how is it specifically trending in our local area, in the state of Maryland, in the city of Annapolis, in the county of Anne Arundel, and even here on the yard with the Naval Academy. As I watch those trends and vectors, that's going to definitely inform whether I bring a large group, 4,400 young men and women, back to the yard. As you all may or may not know or appreciate, all of our midshipmen live in one dormitory, Bancroft Hall, and I would suggest to you to bring all 4,400 back and still try to practice social distancing and to slow the spread of COVID-19. Probably living in Bancroft Hall doesn't lend itself to that. So that will be another factor that I consider before I bring them back. Also, if you bring back 4,400 midshipmen, you need to be worried about their care and feeding. They all need to be fed. You need to have the appropriate medical staff on hand to care for them if they get sick or hurt. And that involves our workforce. And there are certain guidelines that are affecting our workforce right now. So presently, I don't have the capacity to feed them and care for them appropriately if I brought them back. So it's better to have them dispersed. But we revisit that decision every day, Master Chief.
Absolutely. Along the same line, sir, there was a question regarding the end game or the strategy in dealing with the number of cases and deaths nationwide if they continue to increase with no discernible plateau, or if the cases and deaths nationwide begin to plateau, then what is next for us?
Well, let's take the first part of that question. If the vectors begin to grow exponentially, as some of the experts and the epidemiologists have told us or warned us of, if we see that, I think the quote that I've heard is, we expect it to get worse before it gets better. If we begin to see the exponential growth of cases and people actually testing positive, we will continue to put in further mitigation efforts and procedures as we are advised by the experts. That may be a tighter quarantine, that may be more people doing telework, and that may be reducing the yard down to mission essential personnel only. And with regard to mission essential, we're all used to having a mission essential list that we employ for days such as snow days, when we have a big snowstorm over the winter months. I can tell you now, I've asked my staff to revisit the mission essential lists and determine what that means with regards to operating the Naval Academy taking care of the Naval Academy, and taking care of those that work here. We will have, by the end of this week, a new revised set of mission essential lists that are associated by function here. So, and then the second part of your question, I believe, is if the graph begins to plateau and decline, which is exactly what the entire world wants, our nation wants, and our local area here wants, we want to see that graph decline and the hump decline. We will begin to further our thoughts and planning efforts to the eventual return of the brigade and the return to normal here. But we're not there at this time frame.
I agree. That's a little early. Additionally, sir, what do you concern, or are you concerned about the possibility of a long-term or 1 year or more lockdown?
Well, we military folks are planners. We always plan for the worst and we hope for the best. I will tell you that all the planners are looking at a possibility of a long duration impact on us because of COVID-19. We're hopeful that that will be less than the 1 year, I believe, that was posed in the question to you. So we will consider that in our planning efforts on different horizons. We're looking at a 3-month horizon, a 6-month horizon, and a 1 year horizon right now, and making sure that our procedures that we put into place and our processes can be scaled over time as well as scaled in quantity.
I agree, sir. I think that that should give our families a sigh of relief in knowing that we're planning that way and the light switch isn't just going to come on and return to normal.
Yes.
I think that's great. Now I'm a civilian. I'm one of our faculty at home working, teleworking, and if I can't find a full 8 hours in my day, what am I supposed to do?
That is a question that we continue to hear over and over again. What I would like to suggest, as well as the other leadership here at the Naval Academy, in each of what we call cost centers or departments, there's a lot that you can do, maybe not necessarily filling up an 8-hour workday, but filling up a good portion of your professional day. You can choose things that professionally develop you. You can do things that personally develop you. There's a lot of administration behind every one of our jobs that sometimes we push to the side because of our normally very busy days, and the administration is the last thing that gets done, or it gets completely ignored. You can look at some of the standard operating procedures, the written standard operating procedures, all of the directives, the guidance that are particular to your office or your particular bailiwick, and you can spend time revising those. You can listen to podcasts, you can listen to TED Talks, you can take time to exercise by yourself outside. There's a lot still to fill an 8-hour day. And if there was ever a time in our country in which you were being given max flexibility to determine what your workday is, it is now. So continue to innovate, be agile, and ask questions of your immediate superiors as to whether what you are doing or what you're thinking qualify to fill your workday.
That's a great answer, sir. And I would say for the enlisted staff, for the chief petty officers out there, now's the time to making sure that our DINK list, our personal growth and development of our junior sailors, that they're hitting everything and making sure that their advancement exam requirements and everything else are done and done now, so that when we do get back to normal, we are all caught up.
I would suggest, Master Chief, that what we're all finding, and we find more discovery each day, that so many aspects of our jobs truly can be done digitally and electronically online. So we'll be able to get far ahead of a lot of our day-to-day chores.
That's excellent, excellent, sir. Okay, so as an employee performing work during a pandemic health crisis, do I need to use my accrued leave to take time off?
I think the answer is very clear to that. We expect you to be able to do your work either at the workplace on a normal day or now teleworking from a remote site away from your workplace, and we expect you to fulfill your obligated work hours. When you can't fill your workday because you're either sick, or you want to take some personal leave, or you have something else going on in your life in which you cannot give us the work that we're paying you for, yes, you are expected to use your sick leave, your personal annualized leave, your earned leave in that regard.
I agree. Outstanding. Sir, is the Academy planning on furloughs or laying off of any civilian personnel?
No, sir, not at this time. No, we're not.
Great. Another big sigh of relief for some of our families. Do you know of any restrictions or limitations that the commissary customers for one at a time in the store to help reduce the spread of the disease, practicing social distancing?
Yes. There was a really good email or some guidance put out by retired Navy Admiral Bianchi, who is still real involved in the NEX-COM command that does our Navy exchanges and our commissaries. Yes, he has directed each local NEX and commissary to put into practice some social distancing protocols and to limit the number of people that are in the commissary or the exchange at any given time, just to protect those that need to do that necessary shopping. He also wanted all of us to know that there is absolutely no disruption in the supply chain coming from the warehouse, the manufacturer to the warehouse to the actual stores for food and for things that are sold in the NEX. We're still good to go in that case.
That's great. Great to hear. Also, he reminded us that there's a Facebook page and the mynavyexchange.com for both locations for any of your commissary or Navy exchange needs. So I'll put that out there as well. How will the Naval Academy respond when the Maryland Governor, Hogan, announces a stay-at-home rules for non-essential employees?
Well, we now know that Governor Hogan did make that announcement. He followed in line with many other states in the country right now to stay at home. What that directive is to do your absolute best to not only leave your workplace, but to stay in your home with your own immediate family, do your work, care for your family, and minimize your exposure to the rest of the public for the next 2 or 3 weeks. That is in effect in the state of Maryland, and because of that, that affects a lot of our employees that come to work. They're Maryland residents. That drove us to requesting more of our workforce to telework and to stay home. And I will tell you that's in fact what drove me away from my normal workplace in Larson Hall, a building aboard the yard, to my home in Buchanan House to continue to do my work.
Yes, sir. And how does that affect our DoD employees, our military uniformed employees?
We're treated all the same. All of us, whether we're uniformed, civilian, or wage grade NAF employees, are now asked to practice what the Governor of Maryland has asked us to do with the stay-at-home, telework, and socially distance.
Awesome. And again, the Naval Academy has not set a mission essential requirement yet.
We have not. We are minimizing our footprint on the yard, but we have not adopted a mission essential posture yet. If we see the vectors of the disease affecting Anne Arundel County and Annapolis and some of the surrounding counties in a real bad way, I am dependent upon the commander of Navy Installations Command through his base commanders, which for us would be Captain Homer Dennius, and myself. We would become obligated to put further restrictive measures at our security gates and begin to test for those mission essential individuals that still have to come on board physically and report to work. We would begin to put in stricter testing measures to further protect those that have to come to work. But we're not there yet.
Not there. I agree. And I know over at Waterfront Readiness, they're limiting the exposure there as well, sir, with the 2 shifts covering around the clock to make sure the safety and well-being, no more than 24 people per day. It's 12 people per shift, 24 people a day there, so that they're also limiting that. So that's awesome to hear. When will the Academy determine if commissioning week and graduation will happen? And how do you envision grad week at this time?
Good question. I know that's on the minds of thousands, moms and dads, extended families, as well as the midshipmen and our faculty here who participate in all of those very traditional customs here associated with commissioning week. My short answer for all of the events in the month of May, which includes final exams, what we used to call dead week, as well as commissioning week, I've not come to a decision yet, Master Chief. I believe I have a little bit more decision space there, a chance to look at the trends of the disease in our area and the country, to continue to dialogue with our sister academies up in West Point and out in Colorado Springs with the Air Force Academy, as well as the Merchant Marine Academy. And we are going to collectively, to our best ability, we're going to collectively come to a decision on what we'll do with our respective commissioning weeks. But I've made no decision at this point.
Outstanding, outstanding. Post-commissioning, though, once say it happens in one way or another, are we going to have TDY ensigns and second lieutenants on the yard to assist departments with work?
Typically we do. It's very traditional for graduating ensigns and graduating second lieutenants who are awaiting their next step in their training and preparation for their respective jobs in the Marine Corps or the Navy to stay here with us in the yard at the Naval Academy and provide temporary help all across the yard in many of the departments and in all the activities that we do. I am fully anticipating graduating the class of 2020 on time by the 22nd of May through a procedure yet to be determined. And then if I'm able to bring the brigade back, or when I'm able to return the brigade, those graduates will also come back and begin to give that added manpower to the Naval Academy. But until we have all of them back and we've opened up the yard, we will not have that extra temporary workforce.
Yes, sir. I know there's a lot of effort that goes into that dynamic wheel, and you're doing a great job, sir. Another question concerning that is, how does this pandemic affect I-Day and or plebe summer?
Well, let me kind of expand that question a little bit to some of the other big milestones that take place here at the Academy over the summer. So some of those things, we provide a lot of really neat training and camp opportunities for young candidates who are anxious to come to the Naval Academy in the future. Kids that are in either at the end of junior high or high school. We have a program called Summer Seminar. We have summer STEM camps. We have many athletic camps. We have induction day for the entering class of 2024 for the Naval Academy. We provide summer school for some of our midshipmen who are either trying to get ahead in their syllabus here or having to make up some classes in which they were academically deficient. And we have midshipmen here that are conducting some of their typical annual summer training. All of that requires headspace to be able to birth them, to feed them, protect them, and I-Day is just part of that long list. We're going to do our best to keep the machine flowing that produces leaders for the fleet. Part of that running of that machine is bringing in the new class, the class of 2024, as we watch the senior class, the class of 2020, depart with their commissions and their degrees. To the best of my ability, we will bring in the class of 2024 on the 25th of June, which is the scheduled induction day. We will slide that accordingly based on all of those vectors and that trends that we talked about earlier.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, as take one step back before graduation, some civilian institutions are moving towards a pass-fail type of grading system for the remainder of this semester. How do you see the Naval Academy in this aspect?
Good question. My academic dean, our academic dean, Dr. Andy Phillips, and I talk daily about all aspects of continuing to educate and prepare the brigade. With that is how we were going to complete this academic year, and specifically for graduation requirements, how would the midshipmen receive their grades and the credit hours on their transcripts to be able to finish here. We have not made a decision on either, I've heard the different terminology, pass, fail, credit, no credit, complete, incomplete. We're not there yet. A marker that we were going to use was after our 12-week exams are administered, we were going to seek feedback from our faculty and our midshipmen on how easy was it to test, to quiz, to administer all that and continue to track to a grade, an A, B, C, D, or failing grade. And we will make that determination much, much deeper into the completion of this semester.
That's awesome. Almost done, sir. With the medical experts saying a vaccine is 12 to 18 months away, is the Naval Academy planning on bringing the brigade back and resuming classes this fall?
To the best of our ability, we are.
I think you did answer that.
It's my full intent to execute as much of our summer program and to definitely execute our follow-on years of instruction right here in the yard at the Naval Academy and get back to business as normal ASAP.
And final question, sir, is will civilians and military be able to carry over excess leave at the end of the fiscal year? Normally, you know, in the military, Navy sailors were only allowed to carry 60 days at the end of a year. How do you see that?
That's a really good question for those of us in uniform. As you and I know, the way that has been waived in the past, if you were in a combat zone and you were in a situation where you were not able to take your leave that you earned, you could carry over greater than that 60-day quantity up to, I believe, in my career, it's been to a max of 90 days. Yes, I think that's a great question for our Navy senior leadership to contemplate. And if I were a guessing man, I would suggest that while this is not a combat, bloody, armed, violent conflict, this is truly a war. I've heard our Commander-in-Chief describe it as a war against an unseen enemy, a disease. And that has taken away our ability to take leave right now because we have travel restrictions imposed upon us. We have social distancing to practice, and we don't need to overcome any of the places where we would try to take our leave, even if we were able to get to a place that was open. So I anticipate that the leadership is looking at that, and I think we would probably have a ruling maybe in the next month or two.
Outstanding. Well, sir, I just want to say that I thank you for your time this morning, this afternoon here to answer the questions for the faculty and staff. Hopefully we've alleviated some of your concerns and provided you answers that you can use. We'll call it news that you can use today. So I want to thank the superintendent and the staff here at the Academy and say continue on, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Master Chief. I really appreciate you putting this together. It's a great idea.
Thanks, sir.